to see yourself on video killing somebody?
There's no forgiveness on this earth for animals like you.
She was 18, sitting in the front seat of her boyfriend's Jeep, holding 3 pairs of Yeezys, smiling. Less than 10 minutes later, she was shot in the stomach. And as her boyfriend begged 911 to keep her alive, the shooter disappeared into the night. No trace, no cash, no sneakers.
Okay, please help.
Yes, sir, I'm getting help over there.
She got shot in the stomach.
But what none of them knew, a camera was already rolling, a camera that would capture every step leading to her death. This was supposed to be a simple sneaker deal between teens. Instead, it turned into a setup, a takedown that would destroy multiple lives before sunset. Who pulled the trigger and why? And how did the camera that caught it all end up sitting in the killer's own house? Let's get into it. Andrea Camps Lacayo wasn't famous. She didn't have thousands of followers. She didn't go viral, but she had something better, a plan, and a heart as big as the sky. She'd already been accepted into Florida International University's nursing program. Her dream was to take care of people, not for the paycheck, but because it was who she was. She was mature well beyond her age, so she knew you're happier when you're giving, not when you're taking, which is what makes this case so heartbreaking. Friends said her smile hit you like a warm breeze. She was sharp and real in a world that's increasingly curated. Her Instagram was candid, photos in her school hoodie, her hair in a bun, sunlight hitting her cheek, silly videos with her boyfriend, Sergio Berben, in the background. He was her first love. She was his everything. And together, they were figuring life out in a world that had suddenly gone upside down. Because this was 2020, the start of the pandemic. Everyone was out of school, work, or plans. And like a lot of teens, they started hustling online. That's how Andrea ended up in that Jeep, on that street, with those sneakers. Back in early 2020, everybody was scrambling. Schools shut down, stores closed, sports stopped. But social media, it was louder than ever, and sneaker culture had exploded. If you had the right pair of kicks in the right size, you could flip them for 3 times the retail price. And that's exactly what Sergio was doing. He wasn't scamming, he was smart. He kept receipts, verified authenticity, and took clean pics. Andrea helped. She wasn't into sneakers herself, but she was into him. She'd ride shotgun on drop-offs, hold boxes, track listings, or DM buyers. It was their little system, and it worked until it didn't. That week, they had a big sale lined up, 3 pairs of Adidas Yeezys, worth over $900, and a buyer reached out, smooth, polite, fast on replies. His name? George Walton. He didn't haggle or ghost. In fact, he seemed in a hurry, said he wanted the shoes, ASAP. When Sergio asked Andrea if she thought he was legit, she said she thought so. So they arranged the meetup through DMS, dropped a pin, set the time. Everything seemed chill. But George Walton wasn't looking for shoes. He was looking for status, and he didn't care who got hurt to get it. See, George was 19, barely out of high school. But online, he acted like he'd made it. But it was smoke and mirrors, because behind the scenes, George was broke and desperate. And on April 7th, 2020, he decided he'd rather steal that flex than earn it. So he called in backup, his 19-year-old friend, Adrian Cosby, a kid without a plan, who always chose violence over reason. The plan was simple: show up, pretend to be a buyer, steal the Yeezys, get gone before anyone could react. Except, Andrea was there, and George didn't bring any money, just a setup that would turn fatal. The meetup was set for sundown, but something about the location felt off. Sergio got the pin through Instagram, and it didn't lead to a mall or a school parking lot or even someone's front porch. It led to an empty lot on the edge of Homestead. The house they were supposed to meet at wasn't really a house anymore. It was hollowed out and half rotted, the windows busted. It was the kind of setting that made you lock your doors when you drove past it. If Sergio had been older, maybe he would have turned the car around. Maybe he would have told Andrea, "This doesn't feel right," and they would have gone home. But these were 2 teens trying to make a few $100s selling sneakers. This wasn't their first meetup. They'd done drops like this before, in grocery store lots, in quiet driveways, in parking garages. And every time, it had gone just fine. That's the thing about teenage hustle culture. Danger doesn't always register as danger. You follow the buyer's lead, stay quick, stay alert, and move on. So even when the address came through and it looked like a scene from a horror movie, Sergio didn't flinch. He drove there anyway. Andrea, sitting in the passenger seat, didn't seem worried either. They parked outside the abandoned property. The shoes were boxed and clean, stacked neatly in the back seat. But the moment George Walton came walking up to that Jeep, everything started to shift. From the outside, George looked like any other buyer. He simply walked up to the driver's side window, leaned in, and asked the kind of question that wouldn't raise suspicion. "Can I try them on?" Sergio had heard it before. Plenty of buyers want to double-check fit before dropping that kind of money. But something in George's tone, or maybe just the way he hovered, made Sergio pause. "Show me the cash first," Sergio said, instinct kicking in. That's when Adrian Cosby appeared. He didn't say a word. He just raised the weapon and fired once through the open passenger window. The bullet hit Andrea in the torso, right below the ribs. Her body jolted, then slumped forward against the seatbelt. Sergio screamed. He reached for her, one hand trying to hold her together, the other fumbling for his phone.
Okay, please help.
Yes, sir, I'm getting help over there.
She got shot in the stomach.
Okay, and you?
On my arm, but I'm fine. I just
Okay.
need help for her.
Yeah, Sergio was hit too. A bullet had grazed his arm, and yet he was driving at top speed, on the line with a 911 dispatcher, with one thing in mind: save his girlfriend. The dispatcher on the other end kept him talking, told him to put pressure on the wound, but Andrea was slipping fast. She couldn't even look at Sergio.
The female that put you in, she is still awake?
Yes, she's awake. She just threw up. I'm putting pressure on the wound right now.
All the while, Sergio kept driving. The Jeep peeled out of that dead-end street. He didn't know where he was going, just that he had to get help. He pulled over a few blocks away, still talking to 911, still begging for them to hurry.
Please, I really need your help.
By the time paramedics arrived, Andrea's breathing was shallow. Her pulse was fading. They loaded her into the ambulance and sped off, but her condition was already critical. Sergio never got to say goodbye. Andrea was rushed to a hospital while Sergio was stopped and checked by the paramedics.
Okay. No, you're fine right now because all that ground is pumping. Give it 10 minutes and you don't know. Don't worry, let us check you out. If you're fine, we'll let you go, all right?
But can I go with her? No, they're gone.
She never made it out of surgery. 18 years old, in the gut, dead over a pair of sneakers she didn't even care about. The most sickening part? Walton and Cosby didn't even take the shoes. They ran empty-handed, leaving a puddle of blood on the ground in a public space. It wasn't even a robbery. It was an execution that collapsed under its own stupidity. Andrea died believing in her boyfriend's side hustle, thinking this was just another deal, another step toward a better life. But instead of walking away with a few $100, they walked straight into a trap. And what those boys didn't realize, what would come back to haunt them, was that someone had been watching. Not from across the street, not even from inside the car, but from home, through a quiet little camera, mounted right outside George Walton's front door. Adrian Cosby thought he could walk away clean. He didn't wear a mask that night, because in his head this wasn't a murder. It was just a botched deal. In other words, a forgettable mistake. You guys, it's disgusting even to think that these two didn't think much of what happened. Most of us would be scarred for life just witnessing something like this, let alone doing it. But what Adrian didn't realize in his arrogance was that his house was watching him. The footage showed George and Adrian Cosby leaving the Walton home just before sunset, empty-handed, walking calmly toward the abandoned house where the meetup had been arranged. 15 minutes later, the camera caught them again. And still, no sneakers, no bags, no cash, just two teenagers who left with nothing and came back looking guilty as hell. Investigators matched that camera footage with Sergio's 911 call down to the second. The timestamps lined up perfectly, but detectives didn't stop at just the video. They pulled DMS between George and Sergio, showing the meetup was arranged by Walton himself. They found Cosby's phone had pinged near the abandoned property at the exact time of the shooting. Adrian was soon arrested and interrogated. He tried playing innocent.
But you know that somebody got killed.
Yeah, I heard. Like, that was my mom told me. But then she told me that the people said whoever did that ran in the backyard.
The detective let him bury himself in his lies for a minute, then broke it to him.
There is surveillance video footage in that complex. Literally, I've never seen so much surveillance video footage in one entire complex in 2 blocks. You want to see yourself on video killing somebody?
The boys tried to act like they were being framed, but the footage didn't lie. And the moment those images hit the courtroom monitor, everything else started to fall apart. The charges came fast. George Walton and Adrian Cosby were both arrested and hit with second-degree murder, attempted armed robbery, and attempted murder. Neither was offered bond. Prosecutors weren't playing, not with the kind of evidence they had, not with a girl like Andrea Camps Lacayo, left dead in a passenger seat. Walton was the one who arranged the meetup, who brought Cosby along, who set the entire robbery in motion. So in the eyes of the court, even though Cosby was the one to pull the trigger, they were both equally responsible. When the trial began in 2024, the courtroom was full. Andrea's family filled the front rows, some holding hands, others holding back tears. Sergio testified through sobs, forced to relive the worst moment of his life with a jury staring him down. The 911 call was played in full, and the audio shook the room. The panic, the blood, the sound of him begging her to stay with him. That kind of pain doesn't fade, it gets stamped into your bones. Then came the video. Walton's doorbell camera footage was shown to the jury. They saw him leave the house. They saw him come back. They watched Cosby carry the same hoodie he wore during the shooting. The defense tried to argue this was all a misunderstanding, a deal that went sideways. But you don't bring a loaded weapon to a shoe sale unless you're already ready to use it. Both boys were convicted. Cosby was hit hardest. First-degree murder, attempted murder, and robbery.
Count 1, first-degree felony murder. I sentenced Mr. Cosby to a mandatory life sentence.
When it came time for sentencing, the judge didn't mince words. He told them exactly what they'd done. Walton couldn't take it. As the sentence was read, he snapped in court, yelling, cursing, needing to be physically restrained. The same kid who posted Gucci fits and sneaker flexes online suddenly couldn't face the price of his own obsession. Meanwhile, Andrea's father stood to speak.
There is no forgiveness on this earth for animals like you. There is only one place animals like you belong, and that's in prison for the rest of your life.
And just like that, it was over. Andrea was gone. Her killers were locked away, but the hole she left behind was something no court could fill. It didn't start this way. There was a time when sneaker culture was built on love, the love of sport, the love of design, the history behind every model, from Jordan's game-worn highs to limited Nike drops that told a story. But that era didn't last. Not once the money showed up. By the 2010s, sneaker culture had become something else entirely. The shoes were no longer about personal style. They became status symbols, clout badges. And when Kanye West dropped the Yeezy line, that world exploded. Suddenly, a single pair of sneakers could resell for triple, even quadruple, its retail value. Some models were selling for over $1,000 online, and teens took notice. They didn't just want the kicks. They wanted the power that came with owning them, the attention. It created a perfect storm. Limited drops, bots buying out inventory. For some, flipping shoes became a side hustle. For others, it turned into a full-time obsession. And for a few, like George Walton, it became a weapon. Because in this new sneaker economy, the shoes weren't just shoes anymore. They were proof you had value. And when someone feels like they have nothing, they'll do anything to feel valuable, even if it means pulling a gun on a stranger and taking a life. Andrea's death wasn't the first time sneakers were at the center of a violent crime. In 2012, a 22-year-old in Houston was murdered over a pair of Air Jordan 11 sneakers, followed home from the mall, gunned down in his driveway. In 2020, a New York teen was stabbed in the chest over a pair of Foamposites. In 2019, 2 teens in Chicago opened fire, trying to steal Yeezys during a sale gone wrong. The pattern is undeniable. The shoes might be clean, but the culture around them is stained in blood. Before, you had to stand on a corner to hustle. Now all it takes is a Wi-Fi signal and a decent Instagram page. Teenagers today are running full-fledged businesses from their bedrooms, flipping shoes, clothes, electronics, often without a single adult in sight. They DM strangers, coordinate drop-offs, arrange payments, and make risky in-person trades with zero oversight. And platforms like OfferUp, Instagram, and Facebook Marketplace aren't built for safety. Andrea and Sergio weren't being reckless. They were doing what every teen reseller is taught to do: list fast, reply fast, move fast. No parents, no questions. No one told them there was a safer way. No one told them that police departments had started creating safe exchange zones, designated camera-monitored parking lots outside stations, meant for exactly these types of transactions. But how many teens even know about those zones? And even if they do, how many actually use them? Andrea should have never been in that Jeep. not because she was reckless, but because no one taught her how dangerous this world really was. She was loyal, helpful, and loving to her last breath. But she didn't know that in the resale game, it only takes one fake buyer to flip your hustle into a homicide. And the worst part? It's still happening. Every day on apps built for casual sales, teens are getting scammed, robbed, stalked, and yes, even killed, because nobody's teaching them how to survive in a digital hustle culture that moves faster than their instincts can keep up. This is the most tragic part, y'all. Andrea wasn't the one chasing clout. She wasn't flexing online, or obsessed with Yeezys, or looking to make a name for herself in sneaker forums. She was just a teenage girl, supporting her boyfriend, helping him through a rough year, showing up in the way only someone who truly cares can. But she died anyway, because 2 other boys were so caught up in image that they saw her life, and Sergio's, as expendable. George Walton didn't want sneakers. He wanted what they represented, proof that he mattered. But here's the truth we don't want to admit. This mindset didn't come out of nowhere. We taught it to him. We built a culture that rewards status over substance. We celebrate hustlers who never earned what they flaunt. We hand kids an algorithm that rewards fake lifestyles and empty flexes, and then act surprised when they'd rather steal the look than grind for the life. Look at your feed. Luxury unboxings, hauls, designer get ready with me videos from teens who can't even drive yet. Meanwhile, the rest of them scroll in silence, hungry, angry, and desperate to catch up. Adrian Cosby said he didn't even care about sneakers.
I wonder why he did that though. Why not just say the truth, like, hey, we're gonna get some shoes?
I don't care for shoes. I don't care for clothes.
Because you don't give a shit about shoes?
I ain't know it was gonna be a girl in the car. I thought it was just gonna be a boy.
But none of that undoes what happened, because at the end of the day, these were boys raised in a system that praises control, punishes vulnerability, and worships things over people. And Andrea got caught in the crossfire of that sickness. Andrea Camps Lacayo should be alive. Instead, her parents had to bury their daughter. So now I'm asking you, why are we still letting image be more valuable than life? Why are we still raising boys to see worth in things instead of people? And how many more Andreas will there be before we finally say, enough? Let me know what you think in the comments. Was this just about sneakers or something deeper? And what would you do to stop the next tragedy before it starts? Like, subscribe, and stay close, because you already know the next story we uncover is gonna be even harder to ignore.